Hello guys, and welcome back to another cold episode. Well, I was on vacation during this weekend, and as I was, Konami decided to drop a ban list. On the weekend, which they normally never do, and during a YCS, which is a choice, I guess. And it's a big one. Now, granted, this is obviously not a reaction, because I already know all of the cards, as you can see right here, which I would imagine all of you also know. But since I was on vacation, I didn't have my recording set up or anything like that, so I decided to, instead of filming anything, just enjoy my vacation and talk about it afterwards. And there is a lot to talk about. Now, obviously, I've seen all of this, so this is more going to be a discussion on what I believe Konami has done, what are some good changes, etc., and just kind of like some of the cards to talk about, more explanations. So, as you can see here, lots of stuff that are on here, lots of unlimits, semi-limits, and stuff like that. In fact, let me zoom out to get the whole picture in here. So yeah, here are all of the limitations and new changes. So yeah, let's quickly do the... I'm actually going to start here with Kashtira. The reason we're going to start with Kashtira is because lots of cards on here are hit specifically because of Kashtira. And I want to specifically talk about that, and it's also the best deck of the current format, and honestly, probably the best deck going forward as well. So let's quickly do the explanation. Starting with the Diablosis. Diablosis is absolutely horrible. Reason being, this card in particular does some absolutely degenerate stuff, specifically with Kashtira, and it's always kind of the problem card with Diablosis. It's never actually what's making Kashtira, like, be broken, but it is like what makes it unfair and unfun. So I do like this hit. It's a good hit. Yeah, just kind of deserves to be banned. Sorry, I was sneezed. But yeah, there you go. Good hit. Kind of helps, but it's not really solving any of the issues that Kashtira has, which is like the ability to kind of do one card combos, and this guy. A Rise Heart. This card is absolutely absurd. It's a macrocosmos that basically everyone has to be able to deal with, because it also just constantly accrues more material onto it, while also being able to quick effect banish a card in the field. So yeah, there's that. Now granted, having this put to 1 means that if you deal with it, you no longer have to deal with it again, but Kashtira can still do the same game plan and end on similar boards that basically do the exact same thing that they did previously. So this is where the third hit theoretically would come in, with Kashtira Unicorn at 2. Now, again, in theory, this makes sense. Kashtira Unicorn is the main combo piece for Kashtira, and limiting this would be pretty strong. However, Kashtira have so many ways to access this card. One, you can search it off of Fenrir. So that's 3 additional copies. You can search it with the, it's not search, but special summon it with the spell. You can draw the 2 of that it already is. So immediately that is a lot more copies than you would normally already have. Then on top of that, you can play things like Small World to get into this. You could also play Pot of Prosperity, which is at 3 for some reason in the TCG, as it's not on this list. And then, you know, a myriad of other ways to get into Unicorn. You can banish it off of the Rhino Heart, I believe. I forget what it is. The level 4 that banishes, I can't remember which one it is specifically, because I don't care to learn any of the Kashtira names. But yeah, the Rhino Heart, basically, for the archetype, you can banish it off of that and then grab it back off of Rebirth, or Birth. You can normal summon it off of Birth as well after getting it with Fenrir and all of that stuff. So it's like there are a myriad of ways to get Unicorn. So putting it to 2 doesn't solve anything. It really doesn't. This card still does the full combo by itself. Having it at 2, the whole entire semi-limited list is a joke. So having anything at 2 is just truly a joke. So all of these hits are good in theory, and I do like the idea of each individual one. The problem is none of them together solve an actual issue. You need to like ban a Rise Heart to actually have Kashtira be a more in-line playstyle, because basically right now everyone has to deal with a floating macro, or not a floating, but a macrocosmos that is difficult to deal with, and is also a banish, which is very difficult for a lot of decks to deal with, because, you know, basically everything relies on the graveyard in some regard, except for Kashtira. So there's that. Also notably, there aren't things on here like, for example, a dimension shifter, which means that Kashtira is still able to more or less play a similar suite of hand traps, which are still very strong. So basically, Kashtira was untouched. They did lose Diablosis, which is nice, and the Arise Hearts to 1 does matter. Occasionally, it means that grind games are a little bit better, but all things considered, Kashtira kind of didn't lose anything. Don't really know why we did that, but okay. Now here comes the sad part, that being the banning of Super Heavy Samurai Scarecrow, which, if you don't know, Super Heavy Samurai is probably the second best deck of the current format, given the ability to make basically unbreakable boards, with a myriad of Omni Negates and a follow-up as well. It was facilitated not because of this card, but because of Warakushi Prodigy, which is the Pendulum card, which basically just says, hey, full combo with a single card. It's very cool, and definitely more so the problem. However, the Scarecrow is not the newest card, which is why it is currently banned. However, this is one of the newest decks. Now, normally, Konami gives us time to actually play with these new decks, but this time they decided, instead of doing that, they would just entirely forego allowing us the opportunity to play with these new decks at full power, and just immediately hit the cards on the next ban list. Now, granted, the ban list was much later than normal, but even with that being said, we haven't had much time to actually play with the Super Heavies, especially at their full power. And this was definitely a big hit, because this was a very strong card, allowing them to search multiple cards over multiple turns, bringing back a card, and etc., etc. Just a very strong card. This is a legacy support card as well, which means that, you know, it's very, very good for the archetype, because it does a whole bunch of things that the archetype needed for a bad archetype. And then all of a sudden, Super Heavy Samurai got a whole bunch of new support, which made it a good archetype, and so this card was just kind of broken for it. And so I do think that this is a good hit. I just don't like to see it, because this deck is still the most new. Speaking of new, we also have the other deck that was very good, that being Pearly. Pearly Delicious Memory is also the one card that you kind of need to see in Pearly, because it specifically allows you to go and rank up your Pearly monster into Noir, which is your actual, I think it's Noir, I'm not entirely sure of the exact names, but it basically allows you to rank up into the actual boss monster of the archetype. So having Pearly Delicious Memory already limited to 1 means that both of the new decks have taken a massive hit, or at least a notable hit, to their strength without ever having their time in the spotlight, right? They are the newest decks, and they are already receiving a hit. So again, these are weird hits and not exactly necessary. These are good hits for the archetype. They're just kind of too new. So it's kind of weird to see that, like, hey, we haven't, you know, we're hitting these prior to anything else, before you even really have a chance to explore them. Next up, we have Runeic. Runeic got a few hits, most notably with the Naturia Runeic variant, because that was by far the best variant. And with that being said, Naturia Runeic with the Sacred Tree going to 1 does make sense. So we're going to talk about this first. This card basically should have a once per turn. It doesn't. And so instead of eroding it immediately, they're going to put it to 1, basically giving it that hard once per turn. Yeah, this just being able to search out any Naturia card in an archetype that didn't really have a way to send this to the graveyard reasonably is fine. However, now they gave us access to a myriad of ways to send it to the graveyard, either pitching it from hand with the Runeic card in Hugin, or being able to directly send it with, I believe it's Carmella. I'm not entirely sure. It's one of the Runeic, or one of the Naturia cards. I'd have to read them again to specifically remember which one. I'm tired, so I don't really remember. But yeah, being able to just like send it to the graveyard to search out any Naturia card, along with having access to Blessing, which is now just a free special summon or a synchro summon, yeah, it makes sense. Also, on top of that, Naturia Beast is not a very fun card to play against, so having additional access to that does mean that oftentimes you're ending on, like, very unfun boards to play against, of, like, Sunflower with multiple negates, as well as Naturia Beast, or just Naturia Beast in general, which is not exactly fun. So, again, this does make sense. This is a good hit. I think overall it is a positive hit and a hit in the right direction. It's not killing the deck in any capacity, especially with the pairing of Runeic Fountain to 2. Sure, why not? It's at 2 in every other, or it's at 2 in Master Duel and the OCG. Why not put it to 2 in the TCG? However, again, why not just put it to 1? There's no point in putting it to 2. Like, that does literally nothing. I think it's already played at 2 in Naturia Runeic. Like, this literally does nothing. I don't know why we're doing this. Just put it to 1. It's such a bad hit. But at least it's a step in the right direction and is hitting a deck that that kind of needed to see a bit of a nerf. Moving on, we're going to talk about Circular. Why is Circular at 1? Now, if you don't know what Circular does, it basically says any cyber strategy immediately has access to 2 materials, which basically is full combo for almost every strategy. So yeah, that's a bit absurd. On top of that, you could potentially play even more of a Cybers package or a Mathmech package to allow you to also end on Super Factorial, which is just, it's Tri-Brigade Revolt, but for cyber strategies, which is much better, turns out. And it also ends on an Omni Negate as well, with a Diameter. So being able to very easily do that with basically any cyber strategy before actually committing to anything is a bit much. Yeah, honestly, the limit to 1 makes absolute sense. This card kind of just does too much, and being able to do this multiple turns is where it really does seem to be an issue, right? Being able to do this every turn over multiple turns is very strong. We still have access to Circular through a wide variety of means: Small World, Signet Mining, Pot of Prosperity, etc., etc. Lots of ways to still see this card, but now you don't have access to it every time, and that's a good thing. Circular is absolutely stupid, and probably, no, I think a limitation to 1 is fine, but yeah, a lot of the cyber strategy is just kind of homogenous, and this is one of the cards that does it. I like this hit. I think it's a very good hit. However, it does really hurt, like, the 5th best deck, if that. It's not even the 5th, it's like the 7th. So, there you go. As for the, what else do we have on here? We have a branded hit, Expulsion. This is absolutely the correct ban. There is technically another branded card that does this as well, but it does require you to also have access, like, you actually have to go through a fusion in order to do that, and it's a very bad fusion with, like, mid materials and stuff like that to get a similar effect as Expulsion, and at that point it's just not worth it. Expulsion is also just a very annoying card. You give your opponent something like a Gimmick Puppet, and you keep for yourself another monster, and you just kind of go from there and be like, all right, you don't get to play the turn. Cool. And that's what branded basically boiled down to, is like Expulsion Pass, which isn't very fun. So I do like this. It's a great hit. Fantastic. Yeah, best hit for branded. A lot of people were saying, like, branded fusion is going to go to 1. It's too powerful of a card. What is branded doing outside of Expulsion? Exactly. Branded just kind of doesn't do a whole lot at the moment, especially compared to things like Kashtira or Super Heavy Samurai or Pearly or what have you. It just kind of can't keep up. So getting rid of Expulsion is fine. The deck still has a lot of teeth and is able to play a whole, tons of grind and tons of different situations that it can play through and yada yada. I think a lot of people just don't want to deal with Expulsion, which is fair because it's a dumb card. So there you go. And it's so much easier than banning every single one of the cards that could potentially interact with Expulsion in a negative way. So yeah, just hit the problem card. There you go, Konami. Well done. All right, and then the last one I want to talk about here is Sprite Starter. This card going to 2. Sprite is still probably the second best deck. All things considered, Sprite is still super well positioned. Having it at 2 kind of changes nothing. It's currently at 2 in Master Duel. It's currently at 1 in the OCG, but in the OCG, also Blue and Jet and all of that stuff is also limited. But Sprite has been the second best deck since the most recent format. Maybe not the second best, but like second or third. Up there with Pearly, up there with Super Heavy Samurai, up there with Kashira. Yeah, it kind of makes sense to see it hit, but it's never really felt like it's been that powerful. It always just kind of seems like it's just kind of hanging in there, not doing a whole lot, but not doing a whole little. Just right on the cusp there of being too good, but not too good. I think that this is, honestly, Sprite probably needed a bit more of a nerf. Similar to Kashira, where it's like, oh, this has been the best deck for a long time. If you don't want to see us play it, you probably need to hit it more, like putting Jet to 1 or something along those lines, so that you can't have that constant recursion that Sprite is known for. Even with this at 2 in Master Duel, you're still able to basically make it the second best deck. I mean, it's the second best deck as of right now, at least in my opinion, with full power tier. So, there you go. All that being said, yeah, Sprite needed a hit. Starter at 2, sure. Moving on to the non-limitations, that being all of the unhits that we had, which is all of these newly unlimited cards. Fantastic. Steam the Cloak, not really doing anything. That card could absolutely come to 3. Sure, no problem. We have Gen X Sally Birdman. This card does nothing. It's so bad. It's at 3 in Master Duel. It's at 3 in the OCG. It can be at 3 in the TCG. Makes sense. It was used in some FTKs, but they're so bad that it doesn't really matter. Same with Samsara Lotus. Spiral Quick Fix. Again, it's at 3 in Master Duel. Not doing anything. They banned, what is it, Masterpiece or Master Plan for Spiral. So, yeah, Quick Fix isn't really doing anything. Without Master Plan, you're not really doing much. So, sure, have at it. Recital Starling. Why was this card ever limited? Don't know, but sure. Draco Face Off. Yeah, that card can absolutely come off. It's not really doing anything. And Multi-Roll. This is where things get interesting, because not only is Multi-Roll on here, but also Engage has been semi-limited. I do not think that this card should ever be at more than 1. And the reason for it is because it doesn't have a once per turn on a very, very strong effect. The effect to just add a Sky Striker card and then draw a card as well is very advantageous for basically any deck, including Sky Striker. It is not a fun card to play against, similar to things like Appointer of the Red Lotus, which we'll get to later, or Expulsion. Doesn't necessarily mean that it couldn't come back to 3. No, I think you could probably unlimit all of the Sky Striker stuff and they're not going to do anything just because of the power level of the current format, etc., etc. But all things considered, I still don't like this. It's still something that just is never really fun when your opponent goes engage into engage. And you're just like, okay, well, great. And then they activate it, 3 times that turn, and they're now up 6 cards on you. You're like, great, fantastic. It just doesn't really incentivize very interesting games most of the time when you're able to see multiple of this. And so having it at 1, it feels fine. You still get your search. It's still recursive. You're still able to use it multiple times. But you do have to actually utilize that effect effectively, if that makes sense. You have to kind of protect your engage as best as you can, negating something that would potentially banish it or deal with it in some other way, so that you can actually guarantee that your engage is useful. Having it at 2 means that 1, you're more likely to see it, but 2, more importantly, you're more likely to see multiple of it and be able to go engage into a third activation of engage on a singular turn, which is already too much. Having it twice is already too much. So, again, not a big fan of this, and if it ever goes back to 3, all of a sudden you can now slap a Sky Striker engage engine into a bunch of decks and have access to additional material while also having access to a draw card, which is kind of not fun. Anyway, but yeah, multi-roll at 3 is fine. And again, Sky Striker engage ultimately is fine. It's not going to change anything. I just don't like this card. And then we have some interesting changes as well. First of all, Herald of Orange Light going to 2 from 1. Sure, that's fine. This card's still very good, but without access to multiple Ishizu cards, I think this is fine. Lightning Storm. Why? What is this card doing? This is not the card that is an issue in the current format with board wipes. Not this one. Where's evenly matched? Also at 2? What does this accomplish? This is such a disconnect from Konami having no idea what their own cards do, nor what even is being played. Sure, Lightning Storm is powerful. Honestly, this is a terrible card and a horrible card design. You should just ban this immediately. Just get rid of it entirely. No one likes it. I don't think anyone actually does like the way that this card plays. It's horrible. But even with that being said, this isn't the right one. This card's not the one that's seeing a ton of play. Which is saying something because of... Have you read this card? It's crazy. So, yeah, all in all, this is just a hilarious hit. It's not even the issue. We also have Blaster going to 1. Sure, it's at 1 in the TCG. It's at 1 in the OCG. It can go to 1... it's at 1 in Master Duel. It can go to 1 in the TCG. Honestly, this card is fine. It happens to be one of the worst attributes. So, yeah, having it doesn't really matter. You can't really have more than just the 1, though, because Blaster is specifically very strong. Or, more specifically, any of the Dragon Rulers are stronger when they are in multiples. So, wouldn't really say more than 1, but, yeah, at 1 it's not going to do anything. I don't know why Gamma is at 1. I really don't. Konami just personally... Well, not personally, but Konami as a company really doesn't like this card. I don't know why they don't, other than it stops Maxi, which makes sense in, Master Duel or the OCG, but I don't understand why this is a problem in the TCG. But okay, sure. I guess it's because, like, you can get into a Baron basically for free now because of the Excel Synchron that you now have access to. So sure, putting it to 1, whatever. This just entirely kills an entire hand trap from the game because there's no way you're playing 1 of this and a driver for the potential to potentially draw the 1 of. It's a horrible change. I really don't like it. Even playing 2 is a bit bricky and not really worth it with driver. I just don't understand this one. Gamma is so specific to specific metas that it doesn't really make sense. It just barely started seeing more play as of recently, due to it being very good against like Kashtira and Super Heavy Samurai and Pearly and all of that stuff. But it's even then it's not great. It's like it stops Droll, which is fine, but like okay. And only sometimes. So it's like not exactly the greatest. Danglong is fine. Yeah. It's not really doing anything. It can come back to 3, no problem. As for the bans, okay, the last 2 that we have to talk about are Cyberstein, which I think this one is pretty obvious. This is just not a fun card. In no world does it actually facilitate interesting or interactive games. It always just ends on like some random jank that is just not fun to play against. Either you're supplementing your board with an additional monster that just kind of wins the game by itself, like for example, an Exterio or a Warrior from the Last Dimension or another dimension or whatever it's called, or what have you. Or you are doing some silly FTK, which neither of those are fun. And a pointer of the Red Lotus. If you do not know what this card does, first of all, good. It's very annoying. And second of all, holy crap, this card should absolutely be banned. This is so bad in a best of 3. I cannot understand why this is at, like, why it was even at 1. Yeah, you just rip a card out of your opponent's hand. It's also very searchable as well due to things like Griffin and Curious, although Curious is now banned as well in the TCG, but like there are a lot of ways to get access to this card. And even just seeing the 1 of it is very similar to seeing something like Called By against like, I don't know, I can't think of anything in particular, against like a hand trap, right, where you're just like, oh, I automatically get to win the game, doesn't matter what my opponent does, because I drew the 1 of. And so a pointer was very much like that. Oh, I'm going first, great, I'm going to side in this 1 card, and if I get to play the game, I get to win. So, there you go. Very dumb. This ban list is very big, and it doesn't really change all that much. I still think Kashtira is going to be the best deck, even though, like, sure, it loses Diablos, which means that it doesn't have as overpowered of end boards. Or sure, it has a Rise Heart still, but it's at 1, which means that you can like deal with it, and then it's done. And Unicorn basically wasn't hit, so there you go. And because of that, I still think that Kashtira is the best. Super Heavy Samurai and Pearly definitely received big hits. I think Sprite is just the second best deck now. Sprite Starter at 2 basically does nothing. You still have access to basically full combo without having to really interact with anything else. So there's that. Also, on top of that, you have like all of your or you still have like Labyrinth, which was untouched as well, which you could have seen it get hit, but it was like the sixth best deck or something like that. Branded is still very playable, so I would imagine stuff like that. In fact, I'm going to go and do a tier list video right after this, but yeah, this ban list was weird, to say the least. But anyway, let me know what you guys thought. Did you like the ban list? Did you not like the ban list? Are you excited now to play the TCG? Are you not excited to play the TCG? What are your thoughts? Also, this, again, happened during a YCS, which is just mind-boggling, and I just had to share that again. Anyway, that's going to be it for this episode. I hope that you guys did indeed enjoy. If you did, I like it very much, so appreciate it. And if you want to check out more content like this, as well as more Yu-Gi-Oh!, then just be sure to subscribe. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and remember to always stay frosty. Bye-bye. Shout out to the Frost Guard, my members. Thank you guys so much for the support, and I hope you enjoy the content.